You need the music there, Waters.
We don't have sound. Oh no. We didn't get the sound. So,
Well, boo.
but that was awesome. For those of you who, well, and by those of you, I mean all of us who didn't get to hear it, we had a nice little Star Wars theme there for our introduction. But those were our learning outcomes. I am Shomari Key. I'm the director of campus recreation at Northern Kentucky University. I am a proud alum of East Carolina University. I was there from 1999 to 2004, where I got to work with the great Dave Gaskins and Dana Moore at the time, and met Waters and Chelsea later in my career. But very happy to be here. I am going to moderate this session, but I wanted to start off and just acknowledge that I'm sure everybody on this call is in somewhere in some stages of trying to handle everything that's going on in our country right now. I have been sharing with folks that I feel like I'm on an emotional roller coaster where 1 minute I'm fine, the next minute I cried on 2 Zoom calls yesterday. I will not cry on this Zoom call today. And between pandemic and just unrest in our country, just wanted to acknowledge that. And, you know, I love my NIRSA family. One of the things I said yesterday was that because we are a family and because we hold each other up and we are in the people business, that it was good to spend some time with NIRSA folks yesterday. So we are very happy to be here with our NIRSA family today. And, you know, our topic's on mentorship. And, you know, in times like these, it's our mentors and leaning on them and being a mentor for others and leaning on each other to, you know, be real. We do campus rec, that's the vehicle, but like I said, we're in the people business. So, you know, it's these times where we can have these intimate conversations about, you know, where we are professionally, personally, and, you know, we're all in this together trying to figure out how to best navigate it, you know, whether folks have been furloughed and trying to navigate that, or whether we're all in the process of trying to figure out how to reopen, or whether we are trying to, you know, me personally, you know, trying to talk to my children about the realities of what they're going to face in their life. So these are hard times, but you know, tough people make it through hard times. And I'm very, very glad that I have my NIRSA family to help me through it. So with that said, we're going to start with Dave Gaskins, and we're all going to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm David Gaskins. I'm currently the Executive Director for Recreation at George Mason University. Prior to that, I spent 26 plus years and retired from East Carolina University, where I had the great pleasure to work with and watch all of these other 4 individuals come up as students, either graduate or undergraduates.
I am Dana Lopez. I am an alum of East Carolina University. I currently work at Wake Forest University. I've been here for 2.8 years. And what does 2.8 years mean? That means in September will be 3 full years here. My personal stuff is I am a high school and women's college basketball official, and I have 2 young children that are 5 and 3. And I state that because obviously as being a parent, that's a part of my identity. And when I think about mentors and mentorships, that could play a little bit of a role.
Good morning,
Chelsea.
everyone.
My name is Chelsea Phipps. I am currently at UNC-Greensboro in North Carolina, where I'm the Assistant Director of Facilities and Special Events. Before that, I spent 7 years at the University of Akron in Northeast Ohio. Before that, that's where I got my pirate connection with this crew. I was a graduate assistant for intramural sports and youth and family programs at ECU. Go Pirates. As Dana mentioned, a little bit of personal, obviously, here in Greensboro, been here 2.0005 years, I think 2 years and 5 days, whatever that is. And my wife and I have a young son, Cooper. He's almost 2.5, and living the good life down in the South.
And last but not least, our game show host and technology coordinator, Justin Waters.
Hey everyone, excited to be here. My name is Justin Waters, he, him, his. I am a two-time graduate of the Pirate Nation. Where I got to work with David Gaskins, and actually Chelsea and I were there as graduate assistants together. I was in the club sport program, and as she said, she was in the intramural sport program. Referencing Dana, I am a high quality JV official, and I can control a game for officials like no other. But I'm excited to be part with my Pirate brethren here. And as the years have gone through and in NIRSA, I've got to know Dana more, Lopez and Shomari Key more and more each year. And I am wonderful for this network of folks that I'm on the panel with today. So.
And I love this slide that says we have all pushed Gaskins to the limit. I think that is why he reached out to us to help facilitate this and talk about mentorship. I think it was his subliminal way to let us know that if it weren't for him, that we wouldn't be here because of his tireless years of mentorship. So we are all products of Dave Gaskins. So with that said, we're going to get started, and we're going to do our first question here. And if at any time anybody has questions or would like to hop in, you can hit me in the chat. You can just send it directly to me, and we have questions, but we're going to bounce around if anybody wants to interject. So first one, what are some mentor characteristics that you have found vital when modeling your personal philosophy? What were the 1 or 2 moments that had a profound impact on your career? Chelsea, you want to get us started?
I sure do. So I think if I were to summarize, looking at all the different mentors I've had and continue to have throughout my career, I think it's really the people who, I'll say, see past the resume and work with you as a person. Certainly a lot of my mentors have been in the professional field and helped me through my collegiate recreation journey. And there's definitely some professional skill sets, growth and development type conversations we've had, but more so the ones that stand out for me are the ones who have looked at me as a whole person and seeing what I contribute, seeing my potential. I know that sounds very cliche, but truly the ones who can see what I'm capable of when I can't see it myself. There's a couple that stand out. One of them, Dave Gaskins, who's on the call here. Certainly I was a complicated hire at ECU when I was hired as a GA. I'm a Canadian. I was at a university in Alberta for my undergraduate. Didn't know about NIRSA. Was fortunate to have a mentor who said, "You're coming with me to the Charlotte conference," and that was that. And quickly learned that trying to become an intramural sports GA in the US required basketball and flag football, neither of which I had knowledge of from my Canadian school. But DG and others, they saw past that in terms of, when I say seeing past the resume, and saw what I was capable of and what I could bring, and some more of those, I guess what I call soft skills versus hard skills. And taking a chance on me, I thought, okay, this isn't going to work out. Now that I've discovered I need to know flag football, it's too late. But Dave and others have, shown me what they see and try to convince me to see it of myself. The same thing happened further in my professional career. When I was at the University of Akron, I was an intramural sports coordinator there for 5 years. And near the end of those 5 years, I was no longer feeling challenged, and I was feeling a little bit of professional burnout. maybe a bit of burnout. And one of my mentors, John McDonald, he's the director at Akron. He again saw what I could do, and I thought he was completely off his rocker. And it turned into a new opportunity for me where I transitioned from working in intramural sports and youth programs, all I've known, to marketing, memberships, and facility operations, things I have never been involved with. And that obviously opened up a door for me. I've converted to the facility operations side of the house, and I truly owe that to, in that case, John McDonald, for pushing me and helping me see things that I didn't see in myself.
Dave, would you like to add? Thank you, Chelsea.
Sure. You know, there were a number of people that I would classify as people that were mentors for me. And I think a lot of people think like you've got to have one all-powerful mentor. I'm a product of multiple people. When I was in graduate school, I had a gentleman named Rob Haley, who's now a vice president at Tulane, but he was an assistant director at that time in one of his first jobs. And he kind of took me under his wing and gave me some direction and told me some things that maybe at the time I didn't want to hear, but I tremendously appreciate it later. And then I've had some other folks, Bruce Maurer and Steve Ray, through officiating, but they've also impacted other areas of my life. And then Nance Mize, who I worked with for 26 years. I don't know too many other people who had the same supervisor for 26 years, but Nance was the director at East Carolina University. And a lot of the things that she was modeling for me when she was in that role really have kind of come to a role of importance with me here at George Mason, because I hear a lot of young folks say that they want to be a director, and I would just tell them, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And so getting into a director role for the first time, having a network of people that you could call on to ask about situations and how they've handled things has been invaluable to me. But some of the products, I guess, that help make the mentor special to me is they genuinely care about you. I mean, they're in it to give back to the association. They're in it because they want to help you. And I think our goal a lot of times is we've got to find people that understand that and know that you're looking out for their best interest when people talk to you about some things, and will embrace the learning that you can get from all those different people.
All right, so let's hop on to the next slide. Has there been a time when you have found a mentor in an unlikely setting or a non-traditional role? So Justin, why don't you get us started talking about this one?
Yeah, I want to agree with Gaskins' last statement there about you kind of have multiple items that you pick and choose from each mentor that you come in contact with. I think the biggest thing is just, you know, in taking the best of every mentor that you've ever had and finding the challenges to make them even stronger. And we'll talk about mentoring up a little later in the slide. But, you know, I had a supervisor here at ECU, not David Gaskins. And, you know, one thing that I learned from him was just his passion and love for the actual student, and not as their role as a club sport officer in this case. And even throwing caution to the wind to make sure that the student was supported the way they needed to be supported, that wouldn't be allowed through the university. And I can't tell you what that moment is, but when you see it, you know it. And there's the right way to do things, and there's the correct way to do things, and you just have to navigate that path. And I think having that mentor to see that and to take the best of that person and develop it into my own personal philosophies. When a lot of people looked at my supervisor and thought they've been here for years, they don't want to update to new sustainable measures and different things of that. But the raw passion and emotion and love for our students was uncanny. And I tried to embody that in all of my interactions with just not my graduate students or people who may work closely with me or report to me, but with every person I come across.
And Chelsea, would you like to add anything there?
Yeah, I just want to point out that I think, I know this was a mindset I held early on in my career, that I assumed that when I was looking for mentors, I needed to look up in terms of higher in an organizational structure. And so, you know, I was looking for mentors who served in terms of their title in a higher position, who were my supervisor or a supervisor at some level. And I found that some of my strongest mentor relationships have been when I found mentors in other directions, whether that's more of a left-right lateral colleague type of relationship, or even those that I supervise. And so one of my mentors, Andy Bainline, he's at the University of Michigan. He was a former graduate assistant of mine that I supervised when we worked at Akron together. And I have learned so much from him and other students that I have supervised who I consider them mentors of mine. And so just thinking to, if that is a mindset you have, that mentors have to be the people who have more years of experience, have lived through more than you, that may not always be the case. Andy helped push me to embrace and really grow my creativity mindset and being innovative in an intramural sports program, and that less is more. And, you know, he and I constantly are bouncing ideas off each other. And I certainly consider him a mentor, although he would say the same of me because I was the supervisor at the time. So just look in different directions and outside of maybe your typical bubble of finding a mentor.
Chelsea, that's a really good point, because oftentimes when we think of the mentor-mentee relationship, we think of top down and where am I in this spectrum of, am I a coordinator? So should I be looking to a director? There is so much value in finding your people. And, you know, I'm glad you shared that. I had a direct report once, and this person is one of the smartest people I have ever met. And we were aligned philosophically in how, in our worldview and how we thought things should run from, from a programmatic standpoint in recreation. And we were sort of the only two people in the department that felt that way. And so our experience was very different than the rest of the department. And this was someone that reported to me. I learned so much from that person, and that person did a lot of coaching me and talking to me on how to do things. So thank you for bringing that up, Chelsea. All right, so our next question. How have the mentoring relationships in your career evolved over time? So Dana, we haven't heard from you yet. So your mentoring relationship started with David Gaskins in the fall of 1999, and you had wonderful colleagues like myself and Alex Langley, and now you got a big girl job and you have more relationships. How have they evolved since then?
I think, you know, whenever I was beginning my career and I felt like the only thing that I was doing was like reaching out to people to give me advice and help me to get through all of my stuff that was going on. I had moved to the West Coast and it was a different type of operation. And so I'm looking at all these people that I had experienced very similar things together. And San Jose State was different. And so I started thinking about, well, I need to create some relationships with folks that have lived in an environment of an auxiliary service. And so thankfully, Randy Saffold, who was the director at the time, made us kind of like have connections with universities that were very much alike San Jose State. And it was, and him helping establish those relationships, that was the greatest part of it, was like I didn't have to do too much. He helped us create these relationships. And it gave us an opportunity to talk about our programs or what we were experiencing all together. And sometimes we were experiencing it together for the first time, and others had been doing it forever. And I think that just, in a sense, was super, it helped create a larger network. And And even though I would say that I'm a little bit on the shy side, that's what I needed, for someone to like, hey, connect with this person, connect with these people. These are like-minded, they're very much alike in San Jose State and how they are put together at the university. And now I get to Wake Forest, and obviously that's a different thing too. Like, so every university that we go to has its little bitty tweaks and things that are done a little bit different. You have to take some time to get used to those things. And so you guys have talked about, you know, you're getting stuff from lateral mentorship, from your coordinators, from your director. And if you don't hear all of those voices, you're going to miss out on some things. And so I think of it as, these are people that are leading me along my way, and I'm taking little points from them and helping myself create a space in which Wake Forest can make sense for me and also be very beneficial to the students. I have a couple of folks that are out in the industry that reach out to me, and I think it dawned on me a couple of years ago, like, oh, I'm these folks a mentor. These folks are looking to me for advice. Whoa, stop the train, right? So then I have to think about, like, what type of message am I bringing to folks, and how can I make their work life positive? Because a lot of times it's like therapy, right? They're telling you about all the things that's going on that may be different in their work environment that they're not used to. And so it's as a mentor, I feel like it's my way to kind of like help them navigate those emotional roller coasters, right? And I think that's probably the funnest part. I think that's the reason why Dave has probably spent so much time on us. We were definitely not perfect pieces of art. We were a little rough around the edges. Some of us needed it more than others. Not gonna, you know, Shomari and I went to college together. We've refereed a lot of sports together, and we've had a great time. But we're different, obviously, and we needed to be molded differently. And that's the thing that I appreciated about Dave Gaskins so much, is that he took the time and effort. And I just want to pay that forward. There is, if someone reaches out to me and I don't know the answer, I bet you not believe I will call 4 or 5 different people to get a perspective that I think is going to fit for that person. And then that also helps me like create my mentors relationship even stronger. It's like, I'm just not talking about me. I'm talking about how can I help the next generation of folks that are just starting their job in this field.
Dave, how have your mentoring relationships changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about having had the opportunity to be in the field for so long is I've gotten to watch people like these 4 that started as students and evolved and kind of grew their skills. And, you know, I'm fortunate not to have a lot of gray hairs, but there's a couple over here that are attributable to Justin Waters, and every other one of them is attributable to Shomari Key. But to be able to see with pride how Shomari, you know, you're now a director, Dana, you're now an associate director, and Chelsea and Justin are established professionals has been really, really cool. And as our relationships have evolved, then all of you are friends as well as colleagues. And so some very treasured experiences. I mean, Dana is probably the one I talk to the most, and it probably just about every week or every 2 weeks, we're going to talk at some point about various things. Some of it's just life. Some of it's things that are going on, and we'll exchange. It's a give and take relationship with us now because we're colleagues. And, you know, before I took the George Mason job, I talked to 2 people. Talked to one who was a longtime friend from my time at George Mason. The other one was Dana. And I was just kind of going through, do I want to leave this comfortable situation where I'm retired and I can pretty much do what I want to do, or do I want to get back into the grinder that is full-time work? And Dana's response was, let me see, Dana, if I can quote this correctly, "You have to do it." So I'm back, and Dana was somebody that I talked to enough just to get that perspective of what to do. And I'll be honest with you, when she said that, I was like, okay, I guess the decision's been made for me at this point. So there's just some really treasured memories. I had a chance during those 2 years that I was retired to go help out with the NIRSA basketball tournament, which was in Ohio at the time. And on the way there, I just arranged to be able to stop in Mogadore, Ohio, which is where Chelsea was living and working at Akron at the time. And we just had some great dinner table conversations about things that were going on professionally, and it was a give and take type of exchange. So that's kind of how it's evolved. And then when I got into the director role, now I was a mentee again, because it was the first time that I'd been in that role. So I was reaching out to people like Willie Ailing, who's at ECU, Steve Ray, who's at Western Kentucky, to get their advice and perspective. So you can be both the mentor and the mentee at the same time. And so it's kind of been cool to watch the growth of these 4 people as well as others, and then go through some of your own experiences as you change your roles.
I'm going to explain why I said go for it. And I think all mentors want to hear this, right? Is that you have positively influenced folks, and you can make a big, huge difference in tons of people's career lives. You've done that for so many people, Dave. And I was like, so many people are missing out. Like, you have to be there to help them. Please take a new job. So that's the reason why I told Dave to go for it. The other part about like mentor relationships, and I failed to mention this, was my coordinators that come in, I always tell them, like, contact your mentors that you've been trusting this entire time. And then they come back and we have a discussion about what those mentors have told them. It gives me it gets me some information, right? It gives me like, what's the type of philosophies that they trust. So then we can kind of adapt that to what Wake Forest can provide for them. But then it also like helps me learn some new things. Like, so I always encourage them, especially during this COVID time, like, reach out to your folks that you've been talking to the whole time. See what's going on at their university. And then that also gives me a little bit of insight as to what may be coming down the pipe for Wake Forest.
Waters, go ahead, bud.
Go ahead with next slide, or go ahead with some.
No, yeah, you had some information on this question.
Oh yeah. I think for me, and how the mentorship relationship has evolved is you realize that you got to keep moving as well, or people catch up with you. And it's okay to catch up. You know, I look at you know, the people who I've had the opportunity to work with and how we still stay connected. And you know, I specifically I think about probably about 4 years ago here at East Carolina. My coordinator at the time was Hannah Roberts, who some of y'all may know. And Hannah is wonderful, and she was chosen for that position because of her strengths and accolades, and she really complimented me as a professional as well. And through some turnover and different roles here at the university, I was asked to take on some additional responsibilities, and I honestly bit off way more than I could chew. And unfortunately, I was at that point where I was like, well, I'm going to stay in the club realm. I'm going to jump to facilities. So I was dabbling in a lot of things. And on our one-on-one, which I had rescheduled several times due to other things I had taken on, Hannah called me out and just said, hey, you're going to fail and you're never going to get another job because you can't do it all. And you're failing me right now as a supervisor. And it hit me so hard. And I just remember crying in my coordinator's office and saying that, you know, I'm sorry, and that having that real hard truth. And I really felt that, you know, Hannah and I relationship there, it just took another additional step forward together. And so, you know, we'd leave from where we're at, and she realized that. And I think she's a strong professional and is going to be a great person in our field. And that moment in time will always be with me, and how it was a real slap in, you know, that I had failed someone that I had hired and put my faith in and told him I would be there and wasn't doing it. And I am ever so grateful for that moment in my life.
Chelsea, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just want to say 2 things real quick. Dana said something earlier that spurred a thought about that moment of realization that you are the mentor that others look up to, and wearing that hat and thinking, oh, wow, okay, what's that like? And so for me, I think I've just recently reached the point where I am comfortable serving as the mentor for other professionals on how to be the mentor for the people that are their mentees, if that makes sense, like the 2-step mentorship. And even saying that out loud, that kind of blows my mind, but it's a really cool place to be in, and to force myself to do a little bit more self-reflection of like, okay, people want answers from me. I can't just, do my own thing and wing it day to day as my mentorship style. So that's something that when you reach that phase, it opens up a whole new, I guess it's like a re-energization to be a good mentor, because it's a trickle-down effect to others now. And the other thing I wanted to say about how mentor relationships have changed over time, for me, it's really come down to as my needs have changed. And I think I'm a product of many mentors, but kind of a few really strong mentors that have stayed for many, many years with me. And I continue to look to those people, but I now look to them for very different things. And the best example I can share, and for those who don't know me, you're going to learn real quick, my life is an open book. One of the best examples is when I was interviewing for this job at UNC-Greensboro, my phone or Skype interview, whatever, I was 9 months pregnant. I was able to hide that, felt I had to. And here I was going to an on-campus interview 3 weeks after having my son. And so here I was having to come up with a plan to speak to my would-be male supervisor who I've never met, to ask about nursing accommodations while I'm on campus for a day. And that is a really awkward conversation. And you better believe that I turned to my female mother mentors in my network. And I was like, this is new. What do I do? And I think that is just the best example for me of how the same people remain in my life, but the conversations we have are much, much different. And it's just as impactful because I'm tapping into a whole new side of them that wasn't really part of our relationship before. It went well, obviously.
You got the job. All right, Waters, we're going to go to the next question. So Dana Moore, how do you find the right mentor? And Dana, I'm sorry, you are Dana Moore Lopez. I keep forgetting that I met you as Dana Moore way back when, so I apologize. Dana Moore Lopez, how do you find the right mentor?
It's okay, I answered both. So I think I said this a little bit before, but finding your mentors is like going to therapists, right? Sometimes you don't always find the first one at the first crack at it. You got to take some time to kind of figure out who meshes well with you and who can kind of give you the best advice and timely advice and all these kind of things. Like, so there's lots of folks out there that are really strapped for time. So they may seem like the best person like that you want because they have the job that you want, or they're at the university that you want to be, but they just ain't got time for anyone else. So I think about this from a perspective that you got to find folks that, they can be your cheerleader, but I typically gravitate towards folks that are honest in their feedback, even when it hurts, honest when things maybe aren't going so well at the university. I was a part of the 2008 financial crisis, and one of the things that I really loved about my supervisor, Randy Saffold, was he was a straight shooter, and I'm in my young 20s, and you don't want to hear that, hey, you're going to get furloughed and there's a potential for cuts and all this kind of stuff. But he delivered those messages so early that we were prepared for anything else. And I reflect back, and I've told him recently of just how I hope to be that same mentor now in this moment because of what he did 10 plus years ago. The other folks that I look for in a mentor, or what I look for typically, is that they challenge me and can have tough conversations. I always tell my coordinators when they come in is that my job is to help challenge them. I am going to celebrate their successes when they have those, but I'm not going to sit here and clap and cheer for you every single moment of the day. I'm going to try to have to challenge you. And that's because I like to be challenged. And that doesn't mean that someone doesn't care for you if they're not challenging you. I have enough people in my life that are like, woohoo, Dana, you're doing great. But I tend to gravitate towards the folks that give me a little bit, some tough love. I believe Gaskins was probably the first to do that, and it probably hurt and stung a little bit, my heart. But I'm a realist, and I knew that he was giving it straight to me, and I knew exactly what he was talking about. He didn't have to discuss it much with me. I'm a pretty easy, realistic. I knew what was going on in my life, and I was overbooking myself, right? And so then I was missing some things. And he helped me kind of like put some priorities into my life so that work would not be down on the list of the 10th thing. I think Randy Saffold has done those things too, is he's been able to point out where I have my strengths, and then he's like, but here is where I think you need to think about where your priorities stand, and it's made me a better person for it. So I love it that it's easy for me to be very straightforward when we're on an officiating situation. It seems easy for me, but I'm still growing every single day, trying to be that same like straight shooter to the folks that are looking out to me to help them make some decisions and stuff, or help them get better and grow professionally. It doesn't come easy for me because I don't want to be mean. But I also know that if I don't give them that, the constructive criticism, that they're never going to grow in their position either.
Chelsea, how did you find the right mentor?
I think for the majority of my early years in the career, they found me. As I mentioned, the ones who sort of saw something in me and helped push me along or pull me along or whatever it was. But I think in my more recent years, I have found the right mentors by accident. And I think, as others have mentioned, mentors who become your friends. And for me, it's people that I enjoy having conversations with, because that's what it's all about. And Dave wanted me to mention something that in this slide here, the bottom right picture, that's me with my wife, Phelan, also a Pirate alum, and a productive DG. And Nelson Cooper, and for those who don't know, he was a professor at East Carolina University in the Recreation and Leisure Studies Department. We've just passed the 3-year anniversary of his passing from ALS, and he is undoubtedly one of the biggest mentors for me and so many others in Eastern North Carolina. And I wasn't looking for a mentor at the time. I didn't think I would find one in academia, but Coop, as we call them, Coop was more of like our uncle figure, if you will. He was just such a good guy, and I just loved having conversations with him. And it didn't matter that I, barely knew him initially as a professor, and then my thesis chair and my advisor, but we could talk about anything and everything. And I think that's where I've learned that just the people who are willing to have difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations, things that others may feel like, oh, that's taboo. With Coop and some of my other mentors, we talked about it. And that's where growth comes, right? Outside your comfort zone is where you reach that growth point. And so that was Dr. Nelson Cooper for me. So much so that our son is named Cooper after him. But yeah, so I guess I found the best mentors I found by accident. And I know that doesn't help you, like go find your right mentor by accident, but just think of the people that you get good advice from, who you like talking to, who push you, and maybe you feel comfortable being uncomfortable with them.
I like that. Comfortable being uncomfortable. Excuse me. Comfortable being uncomfortable. In the interest of time, I want to make sure we get to these last 2 questions so that we can allow the rest of the folks in the call to ask their questions. So for question 5, Waters.
Hey, Shomari.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to jump in real quick. Just to finish up with Chelsea there, I was still here in Greenville with Coop as he was diagnosed, and visited with him, and we had lunches. And as you talk about how your mentorship changes, death and grieving with someone was a whole new realm that you open up and you live that with that person in the remaining days. And as you are aware, ALS, you lose those communications. And one of the last things he told us in a speech was, know that your life matters to many, so do good work, laugh every day, and press on.
Well said, sir. Go ahead and take this one. Building and maintaining mentor relationships.
So, as you can tell, I like to get out there, jump. I don't supervise a position. I'm there for the person, and I fully believe in investing in the person. I tell everyone who works with me, once we are together, and then whether you like it or not, even when we disagree. And so one thing that I've done with every one of my graduate assistants since 2011, we FaceTime or talk once a month. It is non-negotiable. I will FaceTime you at 10:30 at night and wake you out of bed if I hadn't heard from you in a while. And that's just something that I've carried on. It's a little bit how I was raised, that you always follow up with people. I know during this time of COVID-19 and the unrest we have in the world, it's been very important. I have former students who are being furloughed, and talking with them about how I got cut to 35 hours today. I got cut for 30. I got 25. I think I'm going to get out of the field because I can't afford to be furloughed. I can go find another job in construction. And just continually having these conversations and being my authentic self with them at all times. And, you know, having them as a sounding board. One of the other things that I do is I don't like to miss birthdays or weddings or funerals. I find out about their family. I add their mom and dad on Facebook. Like, I connect with them as a person. And I know it's very outdated, but I love cursive writing. And I write hand letters and notes to my students and colleagues all the time. One of my favorite things that I miss about the NIRSA conference this year, every time I meet a new person, I write down their name and look up their information and try to send a handwritten note, just expressing my gratitude of how I met them, and I look forward to working with them in the future. And so that's just kind of a strategy for me. And as it ties into my job now, still being at East Carolina, I hit them also from, hey, this is what your alma mater is doing right now. And your voice as an alumni is still powerful and still meaningful as we look to give more resources to our students through scholarship funding and just that mentorship piece also, you know, having students that are out of the field and being able to connect a current student with one of them saying, hey, they went through construction or they went to this master's. Let me connect you with someone that I trust and value in my life.
I'll pipe in a little bit about how I've maintained some of my relationships. So because we didn't have the national conference, I got this kind of like nerdy idea that I would host like these little socials with some of my colleagues across the country. So the first one I did was my San Jose State colleagues. A lot of them I had not spoke to personally in a very long time. So one random evening, we all got together, and I think there were like 13 of us, and some of the folks I hadn't met yet. But I was really nervous to do that because I was like, well, these folks are too busy. They don't want to talk. They don't want to discuss what's going on with COVID. They don't, you know, they got their own things that they're having to worry about. But we talked for about an hour and a half, as long as I could, before I had to put the kids to bed. But it was such a great time. And some of them do not work in the field of recreation anymore. Some of them working with the city. So it was really nice to hear their perspective. And we were all kind of spread across the country. So we got a little Midwest, we got a little West Coast, and South and the East Coast. And it was just really fun to kind of connect with one another on a personal note and just check on each other's families and work situations. And although they did still call me the nerd for setting it up, they were super appreciative of just doing it. I just thought someone was going to do it, and I didn't see anyone doing it, so I just decided, let me just go out on a limb. I did the same thing with UNC folks. I reached out to some East Carolina people. I think my next step is maybe even women that have families coming together and just kind of discussing some things, even though we're kind of getting further and further away from, I guess we're kind of getting normal to what we're going through. I think folks still want some connections. At least I know that I'm wanting to talk to my colleagues about what their plans are for reopening and how they're going to get back to some type of normal. Justin mentioned it while we were kind of discussing this, that when we come up with our plans to how we're reopening, now we have this huge network that we can reach out to, and it makes our work a little less difficult to do. I'm not having to write down like our full policies and procedures from step 1. I can contribute to step 5 or 7 or plan number 11, whatever we may be on at the time. And specifically reaching out to Dave, Dave said, you know, he and I talk pretty often, and I didn't reach out to Dave for probably 5 weeks. I don't know if you know that for sure, Dave, but I knew he was going to be busy. Like there was no need for me to get in his ear and chat with him for 2 hours, because that's usually what it is. But then when we did chat, we probably spoke till midnight, I think was the case. But I knew he needed space so that he could do what he needed to do for his George Mason folks.
Thank you, Dana. So in the interest of time, we want to make sure that we allow attendees to ask us questions and get their questions answered. We addressed paying it forward to other mentees. And I love what Dana said about, you know, the students reaching out to, I shouldn't say students, but they typically are former students, but they reach out to you and ask you a question. You're like, oh, wait, I'm your mentor. So it's like this light bulb moment that comes off, and then comes with that the responsibility of making sure, you know, Stan Shingle said to me once, you owe, meaning that I couldn't just, I haven't arrived. And it doesn't mean that my journey's over. It means now all the work that my mentors put into me, I now have to do that for others. So Waters, we have that one slide at the end where it says life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Attributed to Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's what it comes down to. You know, NIRSA is, we talk about it being family, but it's because we're spending our time engaging with our mentors and then paying it forward to those who need us. So with that said, are there any questions from the attendees for any of our panel? And you don't have to type it in. You can just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, so my name's Dennis. I work with David at Mason. It's not really a question, but you other co-presenters will be happy to know that we continue to challenge and push him to the limit, and that he continues to be a great mentor to so many people. I love the comments about taking a little bit from different mentors. I've definitely done that, and I wish I could reconnect with some of them, because, you know, I started working before social media existed. And I'd like to just thank them for everything that they did, because, you know, I'm quoting someone that I worked with when I was 16, and he's had that much of an impact on me. Excuse me. It's also, I like the comment about, you know, when students ask you something and you realize that you're now a mentor for them. And on the same token of not everyone is your full mentor, I know I'm not their full mentor. If I can help them by reviewing a resume or doing something small, I know that's a big deal to them. I was a little shocked with one of our graduating seniors back in December that no one had actually offered to review a resume yet. So it meant a lot to her. And that's just really cool that we get to do that in our field.
Dennis, that's a great point, that if you're really good at something and you can be that to that person, you don't have to be all things to all people, but if you're really good at something, be that to the folks that need it. That goes a long way, and I'm sure she really did appreciate that. Any other questions or comments?
Shomari, one comment about just the whole idea of paying it forward. When you're really successful with that, people understand that it's just a responsibility when you're in the program. And I know you know this from your time at East Carolina, when you got in as an official, someone mentored you, and then you just understood. We never really said it in so many words that it's your responsibility to give back, but everybody did it. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're starting to see some of that at George Mason, but it takes time to build that up. And we've had a culture with giving back to student employees, and a lot of our folks are built into that. And so we want to kind of continue to expand that culture in other areas. But that's when it's unsaid. You don't even have to mention it to people. They know it just because that's what they've been, that's how they were brought in, and they understand that it's their responsibility to give back.
And when you step outside of that culture as a young junior official and you say the wrong thing to a freshman official, you have your assistant director pull you aside and say, don't you ever talk to those young officials like that. And then you learn that's the culture around here. That may or may not have happened to me maybe twice in the same year.
I was going to mention too, some of these things sometimes end up coming maybe a mentor, just a connection. You know, folks that we bring on campus for our interviews and maybe they didn't get the job. If I run across them, whether it's in a webinar or I'm on their website and I see that they have found like their home, I almost always reach out to that person. Like, it's so great to see that you are at XYZ. If you ever need any help, reach out, whatever. Because I feel like there's, who knows, that person may not be able to find their person at the campus that they're at. But if we brought you on campus, it probably means that it was probably a tough decision. So that's something that I personally do. I think if you're a student who is interviewing and maybe you've had those on-campus interviews, don't be afraid to reach out to those folks and ask for some advice or questions, or just get to know them, because most likely we want to see if you're successful in the field anyways.
That's a good point, Dana. You know, when you're doing these job searches, oftentimes it's one position that's available, and you may bring 3-4 people to campus. And, you know, we talk a lot about fit, but, you know, the people who don't get that job, it doesn't mean that they're not worthy, that they're not valuable. It means they're probably going to be a better fit somewhere else. And being able to engage with those folks and stay in touch, that's a nice touch. Dana, I want to work for you one day. Do we have any other questions or comments?
So I was going to add something real quick to follow up with what Dana said there. I love that. And I agree that, as you said, if someone is, you know, high enough on our radar to bring them for on campus, be it 2, 3, 4 finalists, I think it's really important that they know that they are part of your family, your professional department, whatever your institution family. Another credit to Dave Gaskins and what he has shared about building a positive search culture and how you go about bringing on team members, and even those that aren't eventually selected. And I think, to your point, Sho, about we owe, I think it's really important that when any of us are the hiring managers or the search committee chairs or what have you, when we make those difficult phone calls to the people who are not selected, we owe them honest feedback and in an informal mentorship way. I think sometimes it's easy for folks to take the easy way out and say, oh, it was a tough pool and this and that, and I wish you the best of luck. But I think there's always some constructive feedback that can be given if and when that person's ready to receive it. And I know that's where I have found success in forming more informal mentorship roles, loose mentorship roles from people who I interviewed and did not hire, and how we've been able to stay connected over the years. And it's not awkward when we see each other at a conference. We can have those conversations professional to professional because we were honest and helped mentor them to find their right place. Like Dana said, if it wasn't with us, we want them to be successful. You know, we were considering them to the final round, so.
Thank you, Chelsea. All right, anybody else have any questions for the panel or comments? Or with the attendees, I'm sure you all have levels of mentorship, whether you have mentors that have been valuable to you or you have some stories of folks you've mentored. So feel free to share if you choose to. Alexis, are you trying to go?
Nope, my microphone is just all weird.
Well, Waters, you want to give us some final thoughts about how you stay engaged with your mentees and the folks that have mentored you?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, you know, just constant communication. I said not everything's always professional. Obviously, building to the person. You know, if I see on a social media whim that you know they're dating a new person, or you know they've had some a new opportunity come up, or something like that, just kind of checking in. I'll send random thoughts and ideas and tell them to give me a question. I sent one yesterday that said, "How much would it cost you if I needed you to build a 51,000 piece puzzle in 2 days? What's your number?" Just to get them to think, you know, and just stir conversation and be random and everything like that. But I think, but in closing with our session, you know, everyone up here is a mentor, whether you know it or not. And I hope that during this time that you checked in with your people, you know, not to the COVID situation, the political unrest that we have, and the movement now, especially our Black America and our Black colleagues and students and friends, they need our voices, and they need our voices from people that look different than them. And it's very important that that message of unity and that we're with you has to be coming from all directions, top, bottom, sideways, everything. And so I just encourage everyone to please do that and check in. You don't know how much one text message can change someone's life or lives, and even in today's society could save it.
Very well said, sir. Well, thank you, Dana, Chelsea, Dave, Justin, for your time and your energy and your information today. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for attending this session. And Chris, thank you to you and the folks at West Virginia for putting this on in the middle of a pandemic. I know that, you know, lots of folks are upset about the fact that we didn't all get together for our annual family reunion. And, you know, going into this next year, we don't know what budgets are going to look like. We don't know what travel restrictions are going to be going forward. So we really appreciate you all putting together